The stars above the Nalari homeworld shone cold and distant, uncaring about the fate of those who looked up at them. The Nalari had once believed the galaxy to be a place of harmony. Their philosophers taught that all intelligent life would choose peace over war, progress over destruction. For centuries, this belief held true. The Nalari became scientists, artists, and builders of wonders. Their worlds glowed like jewels in the darkness, each one a testament to learning and beauty. But then came the Dravik. The Dravik were unlike any enemy the Nalari had imagined. They did not come to trade or to share ideas. They came to conquer. Their fleet swept through the quiet border colonies like a storm, leaving behind only wreckage and silence. The Nalari had no army, only a small peacekeeping force meant to handle minor disputes. They tried to negotiate, offering resources and alliances, but the Dravik answered only with fire. Now, with each passing day, the war crept closer to the Nalari core worlds. Entire populations fled toward the capital, hoping the great city of Kallian would be their shelter. But deep inside the council hall, fear was growing. The Nalari leaders had exhausted every plan, every hope. Ilaris, the first speaker of the Nalari Council, stood before a massive star map that showed the advance of the Dravik fleet. The glowing red lines of invasion cut through half their territory already. He felt a heavy weight in his chest as he spoke to the other council members. "We have no choice left," Ilaris said softly. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled. "We must send a call for help beyond our borders, beyond even the Confederation's allies." "But who would answer us?" asked one of the ministers, her delicate crest of feathers trembling with fear.
"The other great civilizations have already turned away."
"They say the Dravik are too strong. They do not wish to join us in death." "Then perhaps," Ilaris replied, "we must call upon those who do not fear death." A silence fell over the room. Every Nalari knew what he meant. To send such a signal was dangerous. It could reach anyone. Pirates, mercenaries, or worse. But to do nothing was to wait for extinction. Finally, the council agreed. The signal would be sent. In the great communication hall, engineers worked quickly to amplify the message so it would cross the stars. The message was simple. "To any who hear us, we are the Nalari. Our worlds are falling. The Dravik are destroying us. We offer alliance, resources, and friendship to any who will come to our aid. Please, we cannot hold out much longer." When the message was ready, they sent it on every frequency, in every known trade language, and even in simple mathematical code that any advanced species might understand. The signal burst out of their transmitters like a flare shot into the void, and then there was nothing to do but wait. The waiting was the hardest part. Each day, the news from the front lines grew worse. Another colony gone, another convoy lost. Refugees filled the capital streets, their eyes full of fear and despair. The Nalari were gentle people, unused to such suffering. Children clung to their parents, asking why no one would stop the Dravik. Ilaris visited the refugee camps whenever he could, even though it broke his heart. He had to see what was at stake, had to remind himself why he had sent the message. Perhaps somewhere out there some species was listening. But the stars gave no answer. Until one day, the long-range sensors detected something strange. "Unidentified fleet approaching," the voice of the sensor technician reported, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. The council rushed to the observation chamber. On the screens, a group of dark angular ships appeared, moving in tight formation. They did not look like any Confederation design. Their shapes were harsh, practical, built for function rather than beauty. "And they were armed, heavily armed. Do we know who they are?" someone asked. "No," the technician said, "but they are responding to our signal. They say they are humans." The word meant little to most of the council, but some had heard stories, whispers that traveled along the trade routes. Humans came from a death world, a planet so dangerous that every day was a fight for survival. It was said they were fierce, cunning, and unpredictable. The council chamber filled with unease. "Have we called monsters to our door?" one minister whispered. Ilaris stared at the screen, his heart pounding. "Monsters or not, they had come. Prepare to receive them," he said quietly. "If they have come this far, we must see what they want." Far above the planet, the human ships slowed, their engines flaring like blue stars. Whatever happened next, the Nalari knew their future was about to change forever. The human fleet moved like a pack of hunters, silent and precise. Their ships were not graceful like Nalari vessels. They were sharp, dark, and built for war. The Nalari watched nervously from the observation hall as the newcomers entered orbit. "Open a channel," Ilaris ordered. His voice was steady, but his heart raced. A moment later, the screen flickered and a human face appeared. It was rougher and more angular than a Nalari's, with strong lines and strange brown hair cut short. The human wore a dark uniform, its shoulders marked with strange symbols. "This is Captain Adrienne Voss of the Terran Defense Fleet," the human said. Her voice was firm, calm, but there was a steel edge to it. "We received your signal. Your enemy is called the Dravik?" "Yes," Ilaris said. "They have taken half our colonies. We cannot stop them." "You want them gone?" Voss interrupted, not unkindly. "Good, so do we." Her words shocked the council. The humans were not here to negotiate or talk of treaties. They had come ready for action. You will help us?" Ilaris asked carefully. Voss nodded once. "We've faced the Dravik before. They are bullies. We know how to handle bullies." The council exchanged uncertain glances. The Nalari were used to long debates and careful diplomacy. The humans' directness felt like standing too close to a fire. "Your ships are welcome in our space," Ilaris said at last. "But we warn you, the Dravik fleet is large. Perhaps too large even for you." Voss smiled, a small, dangerous smile. "Let us worry about that." The first battle came sooner than anyone expected. Only hours after the humans arrived, alarms rang across the Nalari capital. A Dravik raiding fleet had jumped into the system, perhaps sensing weakness, perhaps simply hungry for more destruction. "Dravik ships approaching fast," the sensor officer shouted. The Nalari panicked, but the humans did not. Their fleet moved instantly, forming a defensive wall between the Nalari planet and the attackers. On the command bridge of her flagship, Captain Voss stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes cold and sharp. "Target lead ship," she ordered. "Fire at will." The void lit up with flashes of light as human weapons opened fire. The Nalari watched from their observation hall, stunned at the violence. Human guns did not just damage the Dravik. They tore through their shields, turning the first ship into a burning wreck within seconds. The Dravik, used to easy victories, hesitated. The humans did not. "Push them back," Voss commanded. "Break their line." The human fleet surged forward like predators chasing prey. Missiles streaked through space, finding their targets with deadly accuracy. The Dravik tried to regroup, but the humans pressed the attack, refusing to give them time. On the planet below, Nalari citizens gathered in the streets, watching the battle through public screens. For the first time, they saw the Dravik retreat. The cheers that rose from the crowd were mixed with disbelief. Ilaris stood silently, his hands gripping the edge of the console. He had never seen such ferocity. When the last Dravik ship jumped away, the human fleet held position, scanning for stragglers. Not a single Dravik vessel remained in orbit. "Status report," Voss said. "Minimal damage to our ships," her officer replied. "Enemy losses. 6 confirmed destroyed, 4 disabled. The rest retreated." Voss nodded with grim satisfaction. "Transmit to all ships, well done. Tell them to prepare for another attack. The Dravik won't give up so easily." Later, Ilaris met Captain Voss in person. The human captain was taller than most Nalari, her presence commanding. Around her, several human soldiers stood watch, their armor scratched but functional. "You saved us," Ilaris said. "Without you, we would have fallen." Voss shook her head. "Not yet. This was just a skirmish. The Dravik will send more. They'll hit harder next time. You need to decide how far you're willing to go to stop them." Ilaris hesitated. We are not a warrior people. Our laws forbid aggression. We only fight to defend." "Then you'd better learn fast," Voss said bluntly. "The Dravik aren't here for peace. They won't stop until you make them stop. My fleet can buy you time, but if you want to survive, we'll need to take the fight to them." Her words were hard, but there was no cruelty in them, only truth. Ilaris felt the weight of his entire people on his shoulders. Could they trust these humans, these Deathworlders, to lead them into battle? He looked at the captain's steady gaze and saw no fear there. The Nalari had sent their plea to the stars, and the stars had answered, not with diplomats, but with warriors. Perhaps that was what they needed most. The council chamber was silent except for the low hum of the star map projector. The map showed the galaxy around them, red lines where the dry Vic had already struck, yellow marks for refugee routes, and a cluster of blue symbols where the human fleet now held the line. Hilaris stood at the center of the room, facing Captain Adrienne Voss. The human's presence filled the chamber like a storm. She had come with her officers, bringing battle reports and something far more dangerous, an idea. "You are saying we must strike the Dravik homeworld?" Hilaris asked carefully. Voss nodded. "Yes, if you keep defending, you will lose. The Dravik can replace their ships faster than you can rebuild. The only way to end this war is to make them afraid to fight." A wave of shocked whispers passed through the council. The Nalari were scientists, explorers, builders of peaceful cities. The idea of attacking another world was against everything they believed in. "That is not our way," one counselor said, his voice shaking. "We do not bring war to others. We cannot justify such an attack." Voss's expression hardened, but her voice stayed calm. "You already fight to defend yourselves. The difference is, right now, the Dravik choose when and where the battles happen. If you want to survive, you need to take that choice away from them." She pressed a button on a small projector, and the chamber filled with a new hologram, a three-dimensional image of a planet, dark and harsh. "This is the Dravik homeworld," Voss said. "We don't need to destroy it. We only need to strike hard enough to cripple their fleet production and show them that they are not untouchable. That will break their will." Hilaris stared at the projection. He could almost feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. "What would this strike cost?" he asked quietly. Voss was silent for a moment. "It will be dangerous," she admitted. "We'll lose ships. People will die. But if we succeed, the Dravik will have to pull back to defend themselves. It will give you time to rebuild, to prepare your own defenses." Another minister spoke, her crest trembling. "And if you fail?" Voss's eyes were cold. "Then we die fighting. But we will not die helpless." Her words struck something deep in Hilaris's heart. He thought of the refugee camps, of the frightened children clinging to their parents. He thought of the colonies already gone, turned to ash by the Dravik. Was it truly more moral to let his people be slaughtered simply to avoid striking first? The council debated for hours. Some argued that joining the humans would make them no better than the Dravik. Others said that this was the only chance they had to survive. At last, the council voted. By a narrow margin, they agreed to support the human plan. The Nalari would provide intelligence, resources, and navigational data. The humans would lead the strike. When the vote was done, Hilaris stood and faced Voss. "You will have what you need," he said. "But I ask you, limit the destruction as much as you can. We do not seek to become monsters ourselves." Voss gave a short nod. "Understood. We'll target military facilities only. Our goal is to stop the war, not exterminate anyone." Preparations began immediately. The human engineers worked alongside Nalari scientists, upgrading weapons, mapping hyperspace routes, and planning the attack. For the first time, Nalari ships were fitted with defensive shields strong enough to join the fleet in combat. The citizens of Kallian watched the human soldiers train in the open squares. They were unlike anything the Nalari had seen, fast, efficient, and fearless. They turned abandoned warehouses into firing ranges and landing zones. To the Nalari, their every movement spoke of a people who had been forged by a dangerous world. Some Nalari feared them even more now. Others began to feel something new: respect. Hilaris visited the human flagship one evening to see the preparations himself. The corridors were filled with the scent of oil and metal, the air humming with energy. He found Captain Voss on the bridge, standing before the glowing map of the Dravik system. "Are your people ready?" Hilaris asked. "As ready as they can be," Voss said. "We launch in 3 days." 3 days, Hilaris repeated. He looked at the hologram of the Dravik world. "If we do this, we cannot go back to what we were before. The Nalari will be changed." Voss's expression softened just a little. "So will the Dravik." "That's the point. Fear keeps them strong right now. We're going to give them something else to fear." For a long moment they stood together in silence, two very different leaders facing the same choice. When Hilaris left the ship, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Dravik were gathering their fleets, believing they were unstoppable. In 3 days they would learn that the Nalari were not alone anymore. And for the first time since the war began, Hilaris felt a spark of hope. The void of space was alive with fire and motion as the human-led fleet approached the Dravik homeworld. The stars reflected off the black metal hulls of the Terran ships, creating a silent warning to anyone who dared stand against them. Nalari vessels, smaller and less aggressive, moved in formation alongside the humans, their crew tense but determined. Captain Adrienne Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. Red dots representing Dravik fleets swarmed the system like locusts. "Weapons ready?" she asked. "Ready, Captain," replied her officer. "Enemy approaching fast." "Good," Voss said, her voice calm but hard. "Then we show them what happens when they threaten life that fights back." The first Dravik ships appeared at the edge of the human sensor range. They were larger than the skirmish fleet in the Nalari system, confident and arrogant. The Dravik believed the humans were no threat, that they were a primitive species of Deathworld survivors who could be destroyed like insects. They were wrong. Voss gave the order, and the human ships surged forward. Plasma beams cut through the darkness, striking Dravik shields with precision. Missiles tore through their formations, exploding in brilliant flashes. Unlike anything the Nalari had ever seen, the humans fought with a mixture of calculation and raw instinct. Each maneuver was unexpected, impossible to predict, and devastating. The Dravik responded with anger and surprise. Their ships fired back, but the humans anticipated every move. Using the terrain of nearby asteroid fields and small moons, they turned the environment into weapons. The Dravik were trapped, forced to scatter or face total destruction. On one of the Nalari ships, young Officer Lyra could hardly believe what she saw. They're like predators," she whispered to her commander. "Not just fighting, they're hunting." Her commander nodded grimly. "And they are the best hunters we have ever seen." As the battle intensified, Voss directed a squadron to flank the Dravik production facilities on the planet's surface. These facilities built the warships that had destroyed Nalari colonies. Destroying them would cripple the Dravik fleet for months, maybe years. The human ships dove into the atmosphere, dodging automated defenses and anti-aircraft turrets. Fire erupted around them, but the humans pressed forward, landing strike teams on the ground. They moved with precision, sabotaging weapon factories and communication towers, leaving destruction in their wake, but carefully avoiding civilian areas. Back in orbit, Nalari ships assisted, though their movements were cautious. They provided shields and evacuated refugees trapped in the outer colonies. The Nalari were still learning the ways of war, but under human guidance they began to fight with confidence. The Dravik were stunned. Their homeworld, which had been untouchable for centuries, was being torn apart. Panic spread through their command centers. "How is this possible?" one Dravik commander demanded. "They are not supposed to fight like this." Voss's voice came over the comms, clear and commanding. "Because we do not run from danger. We face it and we do not give up." Hours passed, but the humans showed no sign of slowing. They adapted to every Dravik counterattack, anticipating ambushes, predicting movements, and exploiting weaknesses. They communicated in short, sharp bursts, relying on instinct as much as intelligence. In the observation deck of the Nalari Council ship, Ilaris watched in awe. The Dravik had underestimated his people and their allies, and now they were paying the price. He realized that the humans were not just soldiers, they were a force of nature. Finally, the last Dravik ships began to retreat. One by one, they activated their jump drives, fleeing from the relentless human fleet. The survivors barely escaped the perimeter before being destroyed by pursuing Terran ships. A cheer went up among the Nalari crews, but Voss did not celebrate. She knew the Dravik would return if left unchecked. She turned to Ilaris. "This is just the beginning," she said. "The Dravik will rebuild, but now they know they are not untouchable." "That changes everything." Ilaris nodded, still absorbing what had happened. Heiko. Bould hardly believe it. What had seemed impossible a week ago was now reality. His people were safe, at least for now. On the ground, the human strike teams completed their mission, planting charges to disable the final production facilities. Smoke rose into the sky, and the Dravik homeworld, once proud and unchallenged, lay in ruin. Despite the destruction, there was no joy in the humans' eyes. For them, war was never about pleasure. It was about survival and protection. For the Nalari, however, it was a revelation. They had lived in fear for so long, believing that they were helpless. Now, standing among humans who fought with courage, cunning, and relentless will, they saw the possibility of survival, and perhaps even victory. Ilaris looked around at his people. The fear in their eyes had been replaced by something new: determination. They had witnessed the humans' courage, and they understood that their future did not have to be one of surrender. The war was far from over, but the first step had been taken. And for the first time, the Nalari realized that the Deathworlders of Earth were not only allies, they were a force that could turn the tide of the galaxy. The Dravik homeworld burned in silence beneath the stars. Smoke rose from shattered shipyards, and the glow of distant fires marked the places where human strike teams had crippled weapons factories. The battle was over. The Dravik fleets were scattered, their command network broken, but victory had not come without cost. Captain Adrienne Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the casualty report scrolling across the holo display. Names of fallen crew members filled the screen, each one a life given so that others could live. She felt the weight of every name, though her face remained calm. There would be time to mourn later. Enemy pursuit has ceased, her tactical officer reported. No Dravik ships remain in the system. Signal all ships, Voss said quietly. Rally at the rendezvous point. Begin recovery operations for the wounded and salvage what we can. Far above the planet, Nalari ships moved cautiously among the human fleet, scanning for survivors and transmitting messages of thanks. For the Nalari, this was more than a military victory. It was a turning point in their history. Alaris watched the humans work with quiet efficiency. Even in victory, they did not cheer loudly or boast. They moved with purpose, repairing their ships, tending to the injured, and preparing for the next fight. He approached Captain Voss when she came aboard the Nalari Council ship to speak with him. She looked tired but unbroken, her uniform scorched in several places from battle. You have given us back our worlds, Alaris said. Our people will remember this day for generations. Voss shook her head. We gave you a chance, she said. But this war isn't over. The Dravik will regroup. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but they will come again. You have to be ready, Alaris nodded solemnly. We will be. This war has taught us a lesson we should never have forgotten, that peace must be protected or it will be taken away. In the days that followed, the Nalari began to change. They no longer saw themselves only as victims. Their scientists and engineers worked with the humans to upgrade their ships and train new defense crews. Young Nalari volunteered to join human patrols, eager to learn. Some still feared the humans, calling them too dangerous, too willing to bring destruction. But most now saw them as something far more important, not destroyers but guardians. One evening, Alaris stood on the balcony of the council hall, watching the lights of the refugee camps below. Children were laughing again, playing under the glow of safety beacons. Their parents no longer looked at the sky with fear. He thought of the decision they had made, the choice to fight back, to strike at the Dravik homeworld. It had been the hardest decision of his life. But as he listened to the sound of his people rebuilding, he knew it had been the right one. When the time came for the humans to depart, the entire capital city gathered to watch. The human fleet hung in orbit, dark and powerful, a reminder of what courage could achieve. Captain Voss met Alaris one final time in the council chamber. We will leave ships near your borders for now, she said. If the Dravik move again, we will know. And if they come in greater numbers? Alaris asked. Voss smiled slightly, though her eyes remained serious. Then we will come back. But next time you'll be ready to fight beside us. Alaris extended his hand in the human gesture of respect he had learned. Voss took it firmly. Farewell, Captain Voss, he said. The Nalari will never forget what you have done for us. And we will never forget your courage, Voss replied. You chose to stand and fight when it mattered most. That is what makes the difference. As the human fleet rose into the stars, leaving bright trails of light behind them, Alaris felt a strange mixture of sadness and pride. The Deathworlders had come when no one else would, fought when no one else dared, and left behind a new future for the Nalari. The galaxy was no longer the peaceful place the Nalari had once imagined. It was dangerous, full of predators like the Dravik, but now they knew that they too could be strong, that they could defend their homes, their people and their future, and somewhere, far across the stars, the humans would be watching. The Nalari had waited helplessly once. They would never wait helplessly again.